Vives acostado al lado de un cuerpo, ves cómo matan a la gente, pruebas la carne humana, vives el terror.
Tú ya sabes con quién traes la bronca. Para que sepas, aquí seguimos buscándote y no quitaremos el dedo del renglón.
Relaja tu gente a la verga, soy Mencho. Sí. Relaja tus partidas, si no te voy a partir tu madre, tienes toda tu bola de perros. Te tengo identificados 30 güeyes. Hasta tus perros te voy a matar si no te relajas, güey.
If this is how El Mencho speaks to police officers, imagine how he treats anyone who betrayed him. The problem is, psychopathic drug lords like El Mencho see anything as betrayal.
If El Mencho wants you to work for him, you have two options: say yes or be killed.
Yeah, even refusing to work for him is seen as betrayal. The fate some people suffered at the hands of El Mencho are worse than death. The final days of their lives were filled with immeasurable agony. The manner of their demise was sickening, and the details of how they died will make your stomach turn. In fact, it's safe to say when death eventually came for these men, it was an act of mercy. And if that's not brutal enough, El Mencho's hitmen have a nasty habit of posting these murders online. Let's explore the horrifying ways El Mencho's enemies were murdered online. Carlos Enrique Sanchez Martinez, otherwise known as El Cholo, was the leader of the Nueve Plaza cartel. Indeed, Mexico is home to numerous cartels, some smaller than others, all of them fighting over territory and smuggling routes. And if you're a small kingpin struggling against giants like El Chapo or El Mencho, your fate is pretty much sealed. In the case of El Cholo, it was even worse. He'd once been friends with El Mencho. His cartel was seen as a direct insult to the notorious drug lord. To understand why El Mencho was so angry at El Cholo, I must paint the whole picture for you guys. In short, El Mencho is the devil, plain and simple.
Tú ya sabes con quién traes la bronca. Para que sepas, aquí seguimos buscándote y no quitaremos el dedo del renglón.
Since the CJ&G was formed in 2009, violence in Mexico has skyrocketed. They created a huge paramilitary army full of young, violent, psychotic killers. They equipped themselves with military weapons, including tanks and drones.
The Jalisco New Generation cartel took the fight to the next level, shooting down a military helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade.
Tonight, the DEA is offering $10 million for information leading to the arrest of the Mexican drug kingpin known as El Mencho.
And they glorified violence for the sake of violence. Go ask anyone who runs the most brutal cartel. No, who runs the most brutal criminal organization in the world. They will point to El Mencho and his CJ&G. Under his guidance, the organization has committed crimes that would make the skin of ISIS terrorists crawl. Because it's not so much what crimes they commit, it's how they commit these crimes. Kidnappings, extortion, and beatings have become a norm in a huge area of Mexico simply because the CJ&G leader, El Mencho, fancies it.
Vives acostado al lado de un cuerpo, ves cómo matan a la gente, pruebas la carne humana, vives el terror.
El Mencho is nothing short of a monster, and unfortunately, he's found many men like him, happy to inflict unimaginable pain on other people for their sick pleasure. Yeah, it's not about money anymore. It's about sending a simple message: you do not mess with CJ&G. Fear is their currency. They occupy territories by throwing grenades and forcing people to abandon their hometowns.
Concho! ¡Una aguililla! ¡Concho, heridos! ¡X13, Concho!
Relaja tu gente a la verga, soy Mencho. Sí. Relaja tus partidas, si no te voy a partir tu madre, tienes toda tu bola de perros. Te tengo identificados 30 güeyes. Hasta tus perros te voy a matar si no te relajas, güey.
Now they're even targeting the government itself with nothing less than rocket-propelled grenades. The end goal? Power.
They create this chaos to go and sit with the local politicians and say, like, okay, do you want more or shall we negotiate this?
Needless to say, the DEA is very interested in putting an end to the CJ&G, along with the overwhelmed Mexican government.
DEA has seen the number of investigations against CJ&G more than double over the last couple of years.
However, El Mencho doesn't seem to care. According to a rumor, they once tried to buy belt-fed M60 machine guns in the US. Side note, if this sounds impressive or badass to you, it shouldn't. There's nothing cool about torturing, killing, and intimidating people into submission. El Cholo's death story should be enough to knock the taste out of your mouth. El Cholo met El Mencho while they both worked for the Millennial Cartel in the 2000s. Their boss was Armando Valencia Cornelio, aka El Maradona. When El Maradona was arrested, El Mencho worked hard to keep the cartel together. During this time, El Cholo was his right-hand man. Within a year, El Mencho, a former cop with military knowledge, reorganized the Millennial Cartel into the CJ&G, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. This was going to be his brutal empire. El Mencho quickly became a dictatorial figure who didn't stand to hear no or even accept diverging ideas from a fellow CJ&G member. Eventually, this led to a rivalry with El Cholo. You see, El Cholo was used to being El Mencho's most trusted man. He gave him advice and helped him whenever he needed an extra hand. Now, Mencho wanted to be the king of the world and rule with an iron fist. His inflated ego didn't allow friends around him anymore. So when El Cholo came to him with ideas for the CJ&G, El Mencho hated this. He saw El Cholo as arrogant and not falling in line. Of course, El Cholo began resenting El Mencho for it. Why should he be a simple foot soldier all of a sudden? Sadly, El Cholo didn't realize just how far Mencho was willing to go to secure his position of power. El Cholo began carrying out assassinations without El Mencho's green light, but someone got word of this and decided to rat him out. The CJ&G's financial operator, Marcos Hernandez, told El Mencho about this. Yeah, I forgot to mention, cartels are a dog-eat-dog world. Many times, narcos kill fellow narcos by snitching on them. This way, they're hoping to climb the cartel pyramid and become the kingpin's trusted servants. After hearing about the incident, El Cholo could have gone to El Mencho and asked for forgiveness, but he was even more furious. He killed Marcos Hernandez in broad daylight in his car. At this point, it was too late to repair whatever friendship was left between the two. El Mencho declared war on El Cholo. This is when El Cholo split from the CJ&G and formed a smaller cartel, Nueva Plaza. He also took CJ&G's head of logistics with him, Eric Valencia Salazar, aka L85. So you see, the very existence of the Nueva Plaza cartel was an insult to El Mencho. Infuriated, El Mencho ordered a hit on El Cholo, but El Cholo knew his former boss quite well, which means he also knew the people he would send and how he would organize the ambush. The hit was a huge blow. It ended with El Cholo killing the leader of the hit squad. Then, El Cholo formed an alliance with the mighty Sinaloa cartel. Now they had the manpower and proper weapons to pose a real threat to CJ&G. This was happening in 2017 when the murder rate in Mexico reached its historic peak, over 31,000 people. The huge rise in murder rates in the 2010s was all thanks to the CJ&G, and the war declared on pretty much everyone else. The CJ&G kidnapped and killed university students, confusing them with El Cholo's people. They set fire to public buses, blocked roads, and shot anyone they thought was a sicario. El Cholo fought back confidently, believing that the Sinaloa cartel had his back, so nothing could go wrong. Well, it did. In March 2021, the CJ&G located and kidnapped El Cholo. First, they filmed him, asking him to talk about all the ways he had wronged CJ&G. In his confession, he didn't implicate the Sinaloa cartel. He implicated the Mexico City police chief at the time, though. I'm here because I'm an enemy of CJ&G. I met with Omar Garcia Harfuch in the federal district so he could give me his back. This is due to us being after the CJ&G, and he did give me his full support. Talking to the police was a huge betrayal in the eyes of the CJ&G. Omar Harfuch later denied El Cholo's claim that they never collaborated. Regarding a video in which a criminal kidnapped by other criminals refers to comments about me, I reiterate that we will not be distracted by false messages from criminals. My commitment to this society is firm, to fight crime to the last consequences. At the end of his confession, El Cholo addressed all those watching the video, urging anyone still supporting him to stop doing so and focus on their families so they wouldn't meet the same end as he was about to. Poor El Cholo knew what was coming for him, and he knew there was no escape. Of course, a quick bullet to the head would have been merciful, but the CJ&G weren't going to do this. Instead, they kept him alive for days, inches away from death, and in excruciating pain. The CJ&G filmed everything, including El Cholo's last hours alive. El Mencho's sicarios shattered his legs into a million pieces, cut off his toes, and broke his ribs. He was electrocuted, and his tongue was removed. Before or after his death, his eyes were gouged out too. It's safe to say El Cholo was begging for his death all 48 hours he spent in CJ&G's torture chamber. On March 18th, this is the gruesome sight the authorities found on a bench in Darien Hidalgo in a Jalisco tourist center. It was a body wrapped in plastic with two signs stuck to it using knives. One read, "The traitor El Cholo." On the same day, CJ&G released an awful video showing his last days. The CJ&G was once again delivering its main message. Everyone should fear them. So how did the Sinaloa cartel respond? They said nothing, did nothing. Okay, what about his cartel, the Nueva cartel, and El Cholo's buddy Salazar? Same. Said nothing, did nothing. El Mencho had promised everyone who betrayed him that he would send a message. El Cholo's death was received by everyone. Hand-delivered, unmistakable, clear as day. Since then, no one has dared to cross El Mencho like El Cholo did. El Mencho did something that no previous cartel had done. He didn't make his rivals disappear. The Sinaloa cartel, for example, had a man called El Pozolero, or the Soup Master, who dissolved the dead bodies in acid and threw the remains in the desert. Of course, this meant it was murder for the police to find and identify the bodies. And as gruesome as the Soup Master may sound, this method is nothing compared to El Mencho's method. Dissolving bodies in acid was clean in comparison to what the CJ&G does. El Mencho didn't care about privacy or avoiding the police. His cartel left heads of their victims on the streets for people to see what happens if they betray the cartel. Bodies were strung up from bridges with banners saying hello to rival cartels cartels and urging people not to join them. Imagine seeing this on your way to school. Who wouldn't be scarred for life by a sight like this? And thanks to the internet, the CJNG doesn't just leave bodies on the street of Mexico. They film their tortures and proudly post them online for people around the globe to feel the panic and fear they instill in their country.
Nombre? Eric Gámez García. Tu nombre? Bernardo Gámez Castro.
These two men were uncle and nephew, working for the Sinaloa cartel in the 2010s. But don't imagine they were ruthless killers or kingpin wannabes. Felix was tasked with carrying messages for El Cholo, while he was the Nueva Plaza cartel boss. His uncle Barnabas had done even less. He was a simple errand boy, doing pickups and trying to retrieve confiscated narcotics from the police. During his confession to the CJNG, he said he was also barely getting paid for his jobs.
Con ellos y pues la verdad pues eso fue lo que pasó en la trayectoria que yo trabajé con ellos. Me pagaban muy poco, no me pagaban mucho. La última vez que fui me dieron 300 pesos.
300 pesos is about $15 or 10 pounds. Barnabas risked his freedom, his life, and the lives of his family for $15 errands. Was he so financially stressed that he saw no other option but to work for the cartel? Or was he unaware of its danger when his nephew roped him in? Toward the end of his confession, Barnabas also said his and his nephew's lives were now completely worthless just because they chose to mingle with the wrong people. Barnabas was decapitated in front of his nephew, his lifeless body falling on Felix as he tried not to watch. Finally, Felix sneaked a peek at Barnabas's bloody corpse. It's heart-wrenching to think that this was the last thing he saw right before his own terrifying death. Felix was considered an even bigger traitor, so he was slowly decapitated with a machete, slowly taking away his head while he struggled for 2 long minutes. The Sicarios proudly held their heads and showed them to the camera, warning anyone watching not to mess with their cartel. Before we go any further, I must mention this. Please don't go looking for the actual video of the murders. It's a truly gruesome thing to see, and no good can ever come out of it. Sadly, there are many videos like this on the dark web, many of them uploaded by the CJNG. Many YouTube users have commented about being deeply traumatized by watching these sorts of videos. I remember watching this video as a child on an easily accessible site. I truly believe my ignorance and freedom as a child watching stuff like this is the reason for some of my problems and desensitized mind. This was the first video I ever saw. For weeks I struggled to sleep at night. I'd hear the sounds of gurgling noises replay in my head. Sometimes you forget that humans can be the scariest monsters that exist in real life. I had a friend that watched these kinds of videos with real monsters or accidents, and after a while I noticed a big change in him. I believe it killed a part of his soul and he's super desensitized. Lesson to take from this: don't desensitize yourself with this kind of real-life violence. Felix and Barnabas's gruesome deaths came around the same time the CJNG's war against El Cholo, but the CJNG had been posting torture videos online for a long time. One of the most infamous examples is the case we've recently covered, the Quiero Agua video. In this video, an army of clowns, yes, clowns, skin a man alive, then taunt him for wanting water. It makes your stomach turn just to think that something this vile can happen to a living being, let alone that there are people deriving pleasure from doing this to someone. This is the only translation appeared online.
Agua? Dime recio. Que me digas con la boca. ¿Sí? ¿Quieres algo? ¿Sí o no? ¿Sí o no? ¿Quién soy?
As if it matters who Morales is or his other clowns are. How fragile does your ego have to be to demand recognition from a dying man? As it turns out, these are the hitmen El Mencho recruits. Violent, psychopathic men desensitized to violence from a young age are perfect to conduct Mencho's brutal affairs. They fall in line and up to the CJNG's violent ante until the government just lets them do whatever they want. The chief clown in question was a horrible man by the name of Fabian Urbino Morales. He was once known as El Payaso, which literally translates as the clown. What's even creepier is he actually worked as a circus clown before joining the cartel world. Once he did join the Los Metros cartel. However, he proved so violent, he would even shock his own fellow Sicarios. That's when El Mencho noticed him. In this place, Mencho and his people recruited them. When they saw the way they executed their rivals, they burned them in gasoline drums. El Payaso had his own henchmen, all wearing these horrific clown masks, and they would skin people alive on a daily basis. Then, they would laugh at them. If that's not pure evil, I don't know what is. But instead of running away from this horror show, El Mencho was inspired. He thought Morales would make a great chief chief assassin. El Payaso was thankfully arrested in 2019, and so were most of his evil clowns, but their gut-wrenching videos remained online for a long time. Another horrific case is the one of the Los Viagras man, dismembered on camera by El Mencho's hitmen. Los Viagras started out as a self-defense force in 2014 after Michoacan former security commissioner Alfredo Castillo Carvantes asked him to assist in efforts to arrest the leader of the Knights Templar cartel. When authorities tried to dissolve the group, Los Viagras took control of the municipal presidency. A shootout ensued to evict them, and 10 civilians lost their lives in the process. Since then, Los Viagras has slowly expanded in the Michoacan region, and the center of their game is the meth trade. This puts them at great odds with the CJ&G, who also smuggle meth in the same region. Also, El Mencho was born and raised in Michoacan, so this was personal. For almost a decade, CJ&G and Los Viagras have been fighting to the death over territory, and some of these fights end up in the most brutal way imaginable. One day, Mencho's men caught a Los Viagras member and decided to make an example out of him. The video begins with a Los Viagras member chained by the neck. He's held in a torture chamber by 2 CJ&G sicarios, both wearing masks and combat vests, and armed to their teeth. One of the men talks to the camera and says, "I send my regards to all of you who keep acting out, especially you, Gordo and Chava. Look at how I got your people. Look at them. Is this what you want? You do know him, yes? You better step up your game." By Gordo, he was referring to the Los Viagras kingpin, Nicolas Sierra Santana, aka El Gordo. As he says these, the victim is heard in the background, whispering and pleading for his life. But by then, he probably knew there was no chance he was getting out alive. It's more likely he was pleading for a quick death. But that wasn't going to happen either. As soon as a CJ&G sicario stopped talking, he took out a large hunting knife and cut off the man's left leg at the knee. Then he beat the man with his own leg and mocked him for claiming to be tough before. As the poor man cried and begged for him to stop, the sicario replied, "What do you mean no more? This one's for you, Chava, just so you can see how I have your people. Look how I have them." Within a few seconds, the second leg came off. As he beat his victim with it, the man laughed on camera, urging El Chava to keep sending his men to Nueva Italia, a restaurant where they found and kidnapped this victim. In the same manner, the sicario proceeds to remove both the man's arms, all while laughing, mocking him for being part of Los Viagras and threatening the cartels as bosses. It's safe to say the man died shortly after that, but sickeningly, he was conscious right until the end. The video ends with a bit that the sicarios filmed before killing their victim. The man is shown still fully clothed, talking about his regrets about joining Los Viagras. He says that the Los Viagras cartel is nothing and praises the CJ&G. Of course, he was forced to say this. Honestly, how many evil psychopaths are out there? El Mencho seems to recruit them all. Luckily, most of us can steer clear of such videos by simply not searching for them. But there are people in Mexico who can't escape the true nature of the CJ&G murders.
Y les digo a mis hijos, levántense, les digo, porque quién sabe qué está pasando en la calle. Digo, vístanse y nos salimos. Y todo empezó a tronar, ya no había luz, todo empezó a tronar, tanques, camionetas. Pero sí, ahí perdí a mis niños y a mí.
While the CJ&G and Sinaloa cartels fight over territory, thousands of people lose their lives or their loved ones.
Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJ&G, is the single criminal organization most responsible for these deaths on both sides of the border.
Our list continues with a very sad story. Its bottom line, sadly, El Mencho finds betrayal even in the smallest jokes. Sometimes innocent people and even children pay the price for it. Such is the story of Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales, known online as El Pirata de Culiacan, or the Pirate of Culiacan. Juan was born in 2000, and by the time he was 17, he was Culiacan's greatest sensation. Only 17 years old, he had over 1 million followers on Facebook and more than 300,000 on Instagram. For many teens around the world, this is a dream come true, but there's a pretty dark reason behind his sudden fame. Juan had had a tough upbringing. His father had abandoned the family before he was even born, and his mother left him in the care of his grandmother. When he was 15, he dropped out of school and ran away to Culiacan. He had a job as a car cleaner, and in his spare time, he would go out and drink enormous amounts of alcohol. Around this time, someone filmed him drinking a whole bottle of vodka. Juan passed out on camera, but this didn't bother him. In fact, he decided to make a thing out of it. His popularity online quickly snowballed, and his newfound fame earned him invitations to more and more parties. Soon, he began drinking compulsively, chugging down quantities that are abnormal even for the most seasoned adult drinkers. He would post videos on social media showing him chugging beer and bottles of whiskey, sometimes getting so drunk he would pass out. These videos quickly went viral. Teenagers were amused by his party animal attitude, and people around the world were oddly fascinated by how a baby-faced teen could drink so much. This was wrong on many levels, but you know how we tend to be fascinated by taboo or macabre content? Well, the Pirate of Culiacan was one such divisive sensation. Juan's social media stardom even earned him spots in music videos and at VIP events. And to look older, he tattooed his arms, grew a beard on his face, and photographed himself with guns, naked women, and luxury cars. It was pretty sad, to be honest, that people encouraged him to continue this behavior online. The more followers he got, the more they demanded to see him drink and do stupid things. One tiny stupid thing would ultimately lead to his death. In the summer of 2017, Juan was arrested for underage drinking, but he was soon released, and the incident only made him more famous. He appeared in an interview discussing his tough childhood and early drinking problem. He confessed that his true passion was music, and he said he was hoping to curb his alcohol addiction in order to sign a contract with a record label and pursue his artistic career. But even though the show's host encouraged him to do so and wished him many happy years, Juan didn't take the advice seriously. In late 2017, while once again drunk, the pirate of Culiacan posted a video of himself making silly jokes. That's when he announced,
El Mencho a mí me...
For any amused teenager watching, this was nothing but an innocent drunk joke. But kingpins have fragile egos and dictatorial personalities. If one thing is known, it's that you better steer clear of attacking their image. In the case of El Mencho, this couldn't be more true. Someone once said about El Mencho, "This is a guy who will execute your whole family based on not much more than a rumor. He just has zero regard for human life." Sadly, El Mencho soon heard about this video. Unsurprisingly, he decided this was betrayal and gave Juan a death sentence. On December 17th, Juan made the mistake of posting on social media where he would be that night, inviting his followers to meet him at one of his favorite bars in Jalisco. At 11 p.m., 4 armed men entered the bar and shot him at least 15 times. His face was completely disfigured. The authorities could only identify him for his tattoos. A bartender was also killed that night after one of the bullets meant for Juan hit him. He died a few hours later in the hospital. In a sad, ironic twist, the pirate of Culiacan found even more fame in death, but his death was as divisive as his social media stardom. Some people said anyone should know better than to drink excessively and curse violent kingpins. An article stated, he opted to make a career as a broke toy of cyberspace, a path he curved out drink by drink and left him with enemies of flesh and blood. Others pity Juan for being caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. They see him as a victim of modern day times, where many teenagers dream of stardom for stardom's sake, not having any real talent to show to the world, and being willing to do just about anything to get likes from followers. And of course, nobody expects a 17-year-old to know everything. So even though Juan lived in Mexico, he might not have been aware that El Mencho would go this far to punish someone for a simple online joke. Once again, the CJ&G spread this terrible message. This is what happens to betrayers. Then there was a weird plot twist. Another teenager posted a video insulting El Mencho.
Mira bien, hijo de tu puta madre. A mí me pega la verga el Mencho. Aquí si nomás se los digo puro 420. Yo no me duermo como el pirata o el chanito de Culiacán. Yo soy inmortal, yo soy intocable y yo soy un pato con el diablo, cabrón. Así que si no sabes de mí, de existencia, yo te vine a mandar fuego, Mencho.
It's unclear what made him do this or the next thing.
No me da miedo decir esto, cabrón. Yo lo digo fuera en cámaras o aquí, cabrón. Así que ni me la madre del Mencho.
Yeah, no one should be scared to say anything. Having an opinion should not warrant a death sentence, especially when it comes to high, silly teens. By nothing short of a miracle, though, this teen decided to film himself again and publicly apologize to El Mencho.
Para el señor Mencho, pido disculpas, lo que dije no estaba bien, no estaba consciente de lo que estaba diciendo, estaba mal. Ese día amanecí bien pendejo. No me di las consecuencias.
In his apology video, this teen tells a big truth.
Me dejé llevar por los seguidores y pido disculpas, se te quiere, a ti, a tu familia. Y Mencho, no me mates, cabrón. Yo tengo familia así como usted. Y pido mis disculpas.
Exactly. He did it for the followers. So did the pirate of Culiacan. These are young, innocent kids caught in a world where social media encourages reckless behavior. The more extreme you are on camera, the more likes you'll get. On the rough streets of Mexico, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Curse notorious drug lords. You might end up famous, or you might end up dead. Hey, thanks for watching. What do you think about El Mencho's methods? Can cartels get any worse? And is there any hope to bring the violence to a halt? Let me know your thoughts in a comment down below. And before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time.